Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Jeffrey Franco, and I'm the Communications Director at the Sonoran Center. I'm a white woman with blue eyes and light brown hair parted down the middle. I'll be leading today's session on document accessibility. I've worked in marketing and communications for many years, and it wasn't until I joined the Sonoran Center in 2022 that I really became enlightened to the importance of document accessibility for people with disabilities. So I'm excited today to share some of my knowledge in this area and hopefully help us all take some steps towards more accessible content. Today's document accessibility training is a follow-up from June's 101 webinar. That Digital Accessibility 101 session provided a lot of high-level information and background context around digital accessibility on websites, social media, and electronic documents. It included accessible graphic design, fonts, color combinations, and how to write alternative text, and a lot more. So if you missed that one and you find yourself needing a little more foundation in this area, you can access that recording at bit.ly/digitalaccessibility101. So today, after a short review, we'll dive specifically into how to make common digital documents accessible, including Word docs, PDFs, and PowerPoint decks. Rather than just talking over slides, I do have several real-world examples queued up to show you. And at the end of the session, I'll also be sharing some lessons learned and things that have worked well for us at the Sonoran Center when we make our documents digitally accessible. What we're really trying to do here is remove barriers that prevent interaction with or access to information online by people with disabilities. We want to ensure that all people can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with electronic documents and be active and contributing members of the digital world. Most of us are familiar with accessibility features in physical spaces, like a public restroom that can accommodate people who use wheelchairs, or a crosswalk signal that produces both visual cues and sounds. The same principle can be applied to digital content to ensure that users with disabilities have equal access to information and services. Visual, auditory, physical, cognitive, and neurological disabilities should be taken into account when implementing accessibility measures. This work is not optional. Everyone deserves access to resources and information that can improve their lives, and therefore it's our duty to make our documents accessible to assistive technologies. There are also laws in place that require that all federal agencies make their electronic information accessible to people with disabilities. This law applies to when you develop, procure, maintain, or use electronic information technology. Because I'm not a legal expert, we won't be getting into the specifics of the law today, but I do encourage you to research Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act and the ADA to better understand what aspects of accessibility law apply to you and your work, so that you can take steps to make sure you are not susceptible to lawsuits because of inaccessible online content and that you are being compliant. In our session covering documents today, we're talking about accessibility on Word docs, PowerPoint decks, and PDFs that are shared online. Assistive technologies are tools that many people with disabilities use to help them navigate online. But these technologies that allow people to access and interact with digital content only work if we create that content to be accessible. This means that we need to carefully and intentionally design digital resources with the elements that assistive technologies rely on. When tagged properly, a document provides instructions to assistive technologies, such as screen readers, to navigate and read the content properly and in the correct order. The main users of screen readers are people who are blind or have very limited vision, and they rely on their screen reader application to read aloud digital content. Imagine being without sight and using a screen reader application. You have that tool available to you, which is great, but say you're trying to access information in an online PDF that isn't properly tagged with logical reading order. So instead of reading the document from start to finish, your application jumps around and reads the lines of text in a random order, so nothing makes sense to you. That's not equal access, right? Or maybe someone sends you a flyer with health statistics, but none of the infographics on the flyer have alternative text built in, so there's actually no way for you to access the data. And in fact, in addition to people with vision impairment, having documents that have been made digitally accessible is essential for many other users too, including people with cognitive and learning disabilities. They may be using software that only shows the main content of a document, and that only works if a document is correctly tagged and structured. Users with physical disabilities may rely on a keyboard because a mouse may be impossible for them to use due to motor control issues or limb loss or cognitive disabilities. If a document shared with them online isn't structured properly, it can become nearly impossible for them to navigate through it and access all of the information and links within it. Word, PowerPoint, and Adobe Acrobat each have their own built-in accessibility tools that analyze document structure along with other accessibility points and flag potential issues for us. Google Suite products do as well. You can find accessibility tools on the top toolbar in Microsoft Office products or in the side panel in Adobe, depending on your settings and whether you're using a Mac or a PC. Now, these checkers are not perfect, but they do provide us a great starting point to understand a document's accessibility, and they can be really helpful in identifying things that need to be fixed. In my experience, Word documents are often the easiest to address when it comes to document accessibility because by nature, they tend to be primarily just paragraph text. And you're usually creating the document right there in Word where there's some accessibility guardrails already in place. PDFs are what most of you are probably here for today. We got a lot of requests for PDF training in our previous evaluations. And so we will get to that after Word docs. So if you're here for PDFs, just bear with me and keep in mind that the same principles that we learn in this section will also apply to PDFs. So we are going to look at a practical example in just a moment, but first, here are a few things to keep in mind. You'll want to use built-in headings and styles within Word. These are those options across the top toolbar that say normal or heading 1 or heading 2. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. You may not realize it, but the built-in headings and styles actually contain hidden information that can be used by assistive technologies. You'll also want to include alternative text or alt text on all visuals. Alt text is a written description of an image that conveys its meaning. Remember, it is read aloud to users by screen reader software. You'll also want to add meaningful hyperlink text. People who use screen readers sometimes scan a list of links, so you won't want to embed a link labeled "click here" because that alone won't make sense out of context if it's just part of a long list of links. You want it to actually describe where the link is taking someone. And finally, avoid writing important information in the header or footer sections of the document. Many assistive technologies don't have access to content in the header or footer, so your information can get lost in there. And in general, avoid tables if possible and present the data in another way. Screen readers keep track of their location in a table by counting table cells, basically. And if a table is nested within another table, or if a cell is merged or split, the screen reader loses count and it can't really provide helpful information about the table after that point. Blank cells in a table could also mislead someone using a screen reader into thinking that there's nothing more in the table. So unless you have a really intentional, useful table, it's best to present your information in another way. And of course, use, but don't rely solely on, the built-in accessibility checker to flag and correct potential issues. So this is what Microsoft Word looks like. Under Review in the top toolbar, you'll see the Check Accessibility button. If you have a slightly older or different version of Word, you may need to browse around to find it, but you'll most likely see it under Review like you see mine here. When you click to check the accessibility of the document, you'll see the accessibility results pop up on the right-hand side. Errors and warnings will be flagged. Errors are outright issues, whereas warnings are more to call your attention to things that need a human to double check. You may also see intelligent services items pop up. This is relatively new. And that's if AI has tried to help you address issues like potentially suggesting alternative text on your images in the document. So here, let's take a look at a real world practical approach to making a Word doc accessible. Here's an example of a short document and a report that was developed in Word. So you can see it's a couple of pages long here, and it may look good to the naked eye, but we need to go in and make some fixes to make this more accessible to people who use assistive technologies. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure we're using built-in headings and styles. You can see that when I select the main heading of this document, right now it's tagged as normal text. We want to go ahead and tag it as heading 1 as the overarching heading for the document. Then we have 3 different subsections here. What is brain health? Do you know how to maintain your brain health, etc.? And so we want to select each one of those and tag them as H2s, heading 2, heading 2. You may notice that when I'm doing this, it's changing the look of the text. If you don't like the way the text looks based on what you're trying to do aesthetically with your document, you can always make changes to it. Okay, I can come back in here and I can make this larger and black again. I could make changes to this as well, maybe make each one of these a little bit larger. It's fine to go in and make changes to the way that it looks visually, as long as you're maintaining the proper tagging. Okay, if I click on this, even though I made an adjustment to the size of the font, it's still tagged as an H2. What you can do also, if you find yourself constantly kind of making changes to the built-in styles, you can go into, I believe it's here under styles. Oops. And manage styles. And you can customize your styles based on your own personal preferences or your organization's brand guidelines. Meaning you can change, what size and style font an H1 is or an H2. Okay. Now that we have each of those sections tagged, I see a couple of other things that we can improve on. Here in this first sentence, we have a long link here. This is going to be spelled out by a screen reader, okay? https://centerforbrainhealth.org/project. All right, this one isn't too long, but these URLs can tend to get pretty cumbersome. What we want to do is add a meaningful text and embed the link that way. So I'm going to change this to say, according to the Brain Health Project website. And then I'm going to insert the link. Like that. Okay, now if someone were using assistive technology and just browsing through a list of links, the link will be titled the Brain Health Project website. And so they would know exactly where that link is going to take them. The next thing I'm seeing on here is we have an image. We're going to want to add alternative text on that image. So let's see, I'm going to right click it, view alt text. And that brings up our alternative text pane on the right here. And I'll add in some alternative text. And then we can just click out of it and we're done. Okay. Next thing I'm seeing, we have these 6 great tips here, but they're just labeled using regular text. I'm going to go ahead and highlight them and used in the built-in numbered list tool. So at the top, I'll click this icon that says 1, 2, 3. I will make these items easier to navigate. I'm just deleting out that text with the numbers. Perfect. And then last thing I'm seeing, we have a few other tips here in the last section. The way that this author laid them out was in a table kind of format. This information does not need to be presented in a table, right? I think the author did this because they liked the way that this looked visually, perhaps, but we want to avoid tables if we can, especially tables like this. Anytime we use merged cells or it's tables that aren't labeled properly, it can cause problems for people trying to access this content. Okay, so since we don't really need a table here, I'm just going to delete that and add in the numbered list this way. All right, so now this document is looking much, much better. What we can do is go up under Review, and from there we can click Check Accessibility. And it's looking great. No accessibility issues found. So I feel confident that the way we built it and with the confirmation of the accessibility checker, that this is looking pretty good. Simple enough, right? Now that maybe wasn't a perfect approach, but it definitely was sort of a real world practical approach. And now that we have that foundation of an accessible Word doc under our belts, let's pivot to talking about PDFs. We're going to build on the principles we just reviewed in our next examples. PDFs can be great for print, like if you're physically handing out flyers or brochures at a conference, but they're not always the most accessible format for information online because they're often created from source documents that are not accessible. For example, inaccessible Word docs or PowerPoints downloaded as PDFs, inaccessible web pages downloaded as PDFs, designs created using Canva templates. Who loves Canva? I know our team loves it. I use it every day. It's a great tool. It's revolutionary in its ability to allow people at all skills to create visually gorgeous content, but they do have a long ways to go when it comes to digital accessibility. Canva has made improvements, particularly over the past year or so, but in my experience, accessibility on Canva created documents is still really poor. I'll give you some tips for working with Canva later in today's session. Adobe Acrobat is where you will make your PDFs accessible. If you do not see Adobe Acrobat on your computer, you may need to contact your organization to ensure you can get access to it. In Adobe Acrobat, you'll be looking at several areas that are important for content to be accessible. Tags, similar to Word, but also including some new ones. Reading order, alternative text, and file properties and metadata. Here's what Adobe Acrobat looks like. I'll show you in just a second where you can find and open the accessibility toolkit. You'll see icons on the left, as well as an accessibility panel on the right-hand side of the screen, which includes the various tools you will need to use while you're making your PDF accessible. Again, your layout may look slightly different depending on what version you're using or if you're on a Mac, but don't worry about that right now. The approach will be the same, even if you see your buttons and tools in different places. Let's talk a little bit more about the different types of tags you will see in an Adobe tags list. Don't be intimidated by these. They don't have to be as complex as they seem here. You will have heading tags. Generally, there should only be one heading 1 tag or H1 tag for your document. And then headings should be used in ascending numerical order. H1, then H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Don't skip heading levels. You'll also have paragraph tags. Most text in your PDF will be just tagged as a regular paragraph tag. This indicates just plain old regular content or paragraph text. List tags help you organize content. You'll want to have a list tagged with the list tag, L, for the entire list, the list item tag, LI, for each item in the list, and then list body, or L body tag, for the content of each list item. Link tags. All links, again, should have descriptive link text and should be tagged with the link tag as the parent of the link OBJR tag. And then finally, figure tags. Meaningful images in your documents should be tagged as figure, and they should have useful alternative text. In the accessibility panel, you can select Set Alternative Text, and a pop-up will guide you through your images in the document. You can add alt text or edit alt text, or you can also select decorative for unimportant images that don't need alternative text. You'll also need to ensure that your PDF has a title and author, and you can do that in File, Properties, and Description. You'll need to add a language if it's missing, but usually Adobe is pretty good about recognizing English, which most of your documents will be in. You'll do that in Properties, Advanced Tab, and Reading Options Language. Oops, forgive me, let me jump back. And then I just want you to be mindful of security settings as well. This won't apply to everyone, but if you're using security settings that restrict permissions to the document, you may need to go in and check Enable Text Access to Screen Readers in the permission section to make sure that screen readers can access the content in your document. So we're going to have two very basic examples of PDFs today. So let's go ahead and start off with this first one. Here we are in Adobe Acrobat Pro. I have a PDF open here that we will be looking at as an example today. The first thing I do when I'm looking at a PDF for accessibility is make sure to go into my accessibility tools in Adobe. So on the right-hand side of my screen, you can see I have this list of tools, and I have accessibility down here at the bottom. It has the purple person with the circle, and it says accessibility next to it. If you don't see the accessibility tool in your tools panel, what you can also do is head into the tools section in Adobe, and then scroll down to the Protect and Standardize section, and you can choose to add the accessibility tool there. Okay, but mine is already added. So what I will do is click into accessibility, and then it brings up these various tools as well. So what I'm going to do first is just an accessibility check to see where we're at. I'll click on accessibility check, and it opens the accessibility checker options. These are the default options. I don't need to make any changes to this. We do want it to scan the entire document, and we do want it to check all of these various areas. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Start Checking. All right, that was very fast. And you can see it brought up the results over here. If it's bolded, it will tell you the number of issues in parentheses. And then you can click this caret on the left-hand side to see what the issues might be. Okay, so this is flagging that it's not a tagged PDF. It doesn't have a primary language associated. Logical reading order and color contrast are always going to have question marks next to them because they take careful human consideration. They take a manual check. So no surprise that we're seeing those there. Page content issues, all sorts of funky stuff happening. Tab order. If I click down into alternative text, a bunch of stuff going on. Okay, so many issues with this document. I don't know the source of where this is created. I don't know if someone made it in Google Docs, in Word, or if they designed it in Canva, or where it really came from. But wherever it was produced, it was not tagged properly. So a good place to start is by auto tagging the document. When I click this, it's going to go in and delete any existing tags, and Adobe will make its best effort to tag the document appropriately. Okay, so it went ahead and did that and added some tags. Now I'm going to go back into the accessibility check and see if we're doing any better. So again, I'm leaving all of these settings. Click Start Checking. Okay, for document issues, again, it's bringing up the same two that it will always flag that need a manual check. Logical reading order and color contrast. And then under alternative text, it is identifying that we have this figure here that needs alternative text. Okay, so we're in much better shape now. Things are much cleaner, but The accessibility checker isn't perfect, and neither is the auto tag feature. Okay, so we still need to take a look at this document and make sure that it's tagged appropriately and that things are in the logical reading order. So on the right-hand side, I'll click on reading order, and this will bring up my reading order pane. Now, when we click on reading order, it shows us the order in which the content will be navigated by a screen reader. Okay, so you can see that denoted here by the little numbers in the upper left-hand corner on each box of content. The other thing that we can look at is structure types. So here in the reading order window, I'll click on structure types. And this shows us how things are tagged. So let's go ahead and correct the structure types first. I'm going to use my mouse and select the entire heading of the document. And then I'm going to click heading 1 to tag that as an H1. Okay, and then I'll scroll down. I can see that overview is going to be an H2, right? Secondary heading. So I'm going to click H2. Perfect. This is paragraph or text. It's already tagged that way. No need to make any changes. Okay, now under overview, we have another series of headings under that. Interdisciplinary training, research and analysis, technical assistance, etc. So I'm going to click on each one of these and tag them as H3. Okay, and then paragraph, H3. Paragraph is already tagged. H3. Paragraph already tagged. H3. Paragraph already tagged. Okay, so now it looks like everything is tagged properly, and we can go back into the content order. So I click page content order. So generally we want content read from top to bottom, left to right. Here in this instance, you can see this header image spanning the top of the screen isn't read until 4th. Okay, so we probably want to adjust that. But then we have the heading, overview, and this content. And then, yeah, if we go down to the next page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's in logical order. This one is very clean. And the next example we review will have a few more complications to it. But generally, this one is in good shape. So the only adjustment I would make here is the order that this image is in. So to adjust the page order, over on the left-hand side now, you see this icon that looks like a Z. It's actually representing reading order from left to right, top to bottom. I'm going to click on that. And then in here is where we can drag and drop content into the appropriate reading order. So you can see we have page 1 and page 2. I'll start with page 1. So I'll click this caret. So if I click on this first item, you can see it highlights that content on the page. What we want to do is pull this image to the top. Oops. Let me drag this down. Okay, so now we have the image, heading 1, heading 2, and the content on that first page. That looks great. Let's just double check page 2. So I'll click into it. Yep, interdisciplinary training, the paragraph content, research and analysis. You can see as I click down the list, everything is populating in correct order. So that looks great. I'm going to go ahead and click save. It is good to save as we go, and that way we don't lose any progress on the accessibility work that we're doing. Okay, so going back to the accessibility checker, logical reading order needs a manual check. I'm going to right-click that and say pass. We carefully reviewed that and set it into logical reading order. Color contrast needs manual check. The color contrast on here looks great. We just have white background with dark text on it. We're not worried about that at all. I'm going to click pass. Okay, now looking at alternative text. The checker did flag that we don't have any alternative text on this image yet. So what I'm going to do is over on the right-hand side, I'm going to click Set Alternative Text. When you click this button, Acrobat will detect all figures in the document and will display their associated alternative text. So in this instance, it's saying image 1 of 1. There's only one figure detected here, and the alternative text right now is blank. So this is where we can go ahead and input alternative text. Maybe I'll say ranch style brick house converted into an office on the University of Arizona campus. Okay, I'm going to click Save and Close. And then anytime you make adjustments, and if you want the accessibility checker to go in and see if it has fixed the issue, what you can do is you can right click on the issue. So here I'm going to hover over figures alternative text failed, and I'm going to say check again. And there we go. Now it's saying we've passed. Okay, so I'm going to click Save. Now this is looking really great. The last thing I like to do is to go into Properties. And make sure that we have the title of the document appropriately set. So you can see here, we have the name of the file, and then the title right now is just reflecting the exact name of the file. Sonoran Center one-pager _ example revision 2024 final. We need the title to accurately reflect the full title of the document itself. Okay. So we want the title to say, Getting to Know the University of Arizona Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. All right, now we will click Save. Having that title set is really important to ensure that if someone using assistive technology is trying to sort through documents, they're able to kind of quickly understand what document they're looking at, right? They're not relying on this file name. All right, here are a couple more tips for when you see a failed item in the accessibility checker. These weren't reviewed in the previous example, but they can be super helpful. You can right-click on the failed item to see options. And then sometimes you can select Fix from the dropdown. When you select Fix, it will bring you right to where you can make the correction in Adobe. Like here, I clicked Fix on the title failed error, and it brings me to where I can go ahead and just enter the title and then click OK to save it. Or you can always select Explain from the Adobe dropdown to be navigated to the Adobe Help website to learn more. When I select Explain on that same error, it opens this page in my browser. This is the Adobe Help site, and it has explanations for every aspect of accessibility, walking through how to make a fix manually. This is a great resource, especially if you're new to the process. Now let's move on to another example. Again, just a very practical example that you might encounter in your everyday work. This one is a little bit more complex. All right, here I am in Canva. One of our team members designed this beautiful flyer in here. I'm going to go ahead and download it as a PDF, and then we'll open it in Adobe Acrobat and handle the accessibility from there. The accessibility on this one, I can tell already, is going to be a little bit more complicated because we know it was produced in Canva, so there won't be any built-in accessibility. And a lot of these elements, I have a feeling, might give us a little bit of trouble. I bet Adobe is going to flag these as being images that need alternative text, which in fact they won't. So again, first thing I'm going to do is go over here on the right-hand side and click accessibility. Let's run an accessibility check and see where we're at. So I'll click accessibility check. I'm not going to change any of the settings. Start checking. So the same two issues that always get flagged are popping up here. Logical reading order and color contrast. Both of those will need a manual check. And then under alternative text, oh yeah, we have a bunch of kind of funky issues here. Associated with content, this failed. It flagged 4 elements not associated with content. It says there's an other element that requires alternative text and it failed. It's flagging that image there. And then all of these are going to be related to the other various design elements. So let's go ahead and click auto tag document and see if this can get us any closer. Okay, so these are the new tags. It's looking pretty good. We'll run the accessibility checker again. Again, same two that are always flagged there. Okay, now this looks much cleaner. For figures where alternative text failed, let's see, yeah, the first one is this circle element here. So it is detecting several elements across the page. Oh, you know, it's subtle, but when I clicked on figure 2, it's actually highlighting, let me zoom in, this first bullet point here. And then when I click figure 3, it's the next bullet point. I bet figure 4 is the next one. Yeah, so it's funny. It's flagging those as being figures that need alternative text when in fact, we won't need alternative text on those. So I'll show you how to fix that here in a moment. Let's pop over to reading order on the right-hand side. And we can make sure everything is tagged the way that we want it, so that the proper structure types are tagged, and that also it's being read in the proper order. Okay, so let's do structure types first. I'm going to select this. We're going to make this our H1. So you can do this 2 ways. You can either use your cursor and drag it all the way around the content like this. You want to make sure not to accidentally catch anything else. Like I think when I did this, I was actually catching elements of the circle here. So when it's selected this way, then you can go ahead and click a structure type to tag it. Or since this is already boxed together as one piece of content, I can also just hover over the structure type here and retag it. Okay, so this paragraph looks good. When we get down here, this looks a little messy because you can see it's got each one of these bullet points flagged as a figure. So what I'm going to do is click on figure. And then in my reading order pane, I'm going to select background/artifact. Okay, that's going to remove the tagging and hide it from assistive technologies trying to search for alternative text for that. Okay, so again, I'm just going to click on each one, background artifact. Here we go. Now for this list content, this looks great. You can see this L body tag here. We want this structure type to be list elements. That way each one of these items is being read with a break in between, okay? Versus being read like one long run-on sentence by assistive technology. We want it to say blood pressure screenings, glucose checks, HIV testing, right? The same logical way that we would read it visually. Okay, so just a few more figures here that we need to get rid of. So again, I'm going to select this. We're going to call this background/artifact. I'm going to do that for all of these various design elements, okay? And then working our way down the page. This logo is tagged as a figure. We do want that. And this last link is marked as a link here. That looks great. Okay, so now let's go to page content order. Now, when I selected that, you can see the order is identified here on each of the content boxes. So over on the left-hand side again, that icon that looks like a Z or content being read from left to right, top to bottom, that is where we click in to make adjustments to the content order. And then we drag and drop from here. Okay, so let me reorder this. This is starting with this paragraph down here. Then it's jumping to the logo. Then it's jumping up to the date and time. We are all over the place. So I'm going to start with the date and time. That should be after free health services. Health screenings should be under that. You can really approach this in any way you want that makes sense for you when it comes to reordering it. Okay, so then after that, we want the blood pressure screenings. Okay, organized by. After organized by, we want that image to appear. So I'm going to drag that down. Oops. And then the logo is the last thing. Okay, so again, over here on the left-hand side, we can click on each one of these items. I can even use my keyboard to navigate down. So I'm going to click down arrow. Down arrow. Yeah, this is in great order now. Okay, so I'm going to click save. Let's go back into the accessibility check one more time. We almost forgot alternative text on this image. So on the right-hand side, you'll see set alternative text. Again, when I click that, Acrobat will detect all the figures in the document and display their alternative text. In this case, it's just flagging this one logo now that we've cleaned everything else up. And I'm going to go ahead and put in alternative text for that one. Oops. Okay, so I'm saying the University of Arizona Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. So assistive technology will read organized by the University of Arizona Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. Okay, I'm going to right click this, check again, looking great. Okay, now going back up to the top to these issues that require a manual check, logical reading order, we're going to go ahead and click pass. Color contrast needs a manual check. Again, the color contrast on here looks great. We have white text on a very dark background. On the white background, we have dark text. Looks fantastic. Now, last stop, we will come in here to properties and fix the title. Again, the title that it automatically pulled in was what the file was named when we downloaded it from Canva. So we want to go ahead and fix this, and we're going to call it Free Health Services. So something that we did not touch on in either example is fillable forms. If your organization uses PDF forms for any purpose online, you need to use the Prepare Form tool as part of your accessibility process so that people with disabilities can properly access and use the form. This tool automatically detects and adds form fields based on the visual layout of the file. If you have a simple form, it might identify most of the form fields correctly, but it's less accurate with more complex forms. All forms should be manually reviewed for accuracy, just like with everything else. The basic components of an accessible PDF form include all form fields have a unique name. All form fields have tooltips. All required fields have appropriate visual and non-visual indicators. Form fields are correctly tagged, and forms have logical reading and keyboard navigation order. Does it really need to be a PDF? This is a question that you should be asking yourself often. PDFs are versatile and convenient when you want to share information, and everyone loves a good flyer. But like we've talked about in depth today, PDFs are often not structured properly, which can create barriers for people who need to read and understand the information. Before you create and share a flyer online, here are a few possible alternatives that are going to be easier and more accessible for you and your organizations to produce. Consider sharing the content on a web page instead. It's much easier to maintain and update web pages, and web pages are generally more accessible than PDFs. Web pages, for instance, are responsive to browser size. They reorganize text to fit into your display while maintaining your readable font size. Your audience is also more likely to read a web page than to download and read a PDF, especially on their phones. Consider creating a series of graphics to share on social media. Do you have short snippets of content to share? Social media might be more effective and more accessible for you to get the word out. You can design images for social and add accessibility, like alternative text, within the socials platform and accessibility tools. Consider using a Google or Qualtrics form instead of a PDF or Word doc form. A web form is also much easier to create and much more accessible. This allows for streamlined data collection, autofill access, and better version control. Consider sharing the content directly in an HTML email using an email marketing platform like MailChimp or Constant Contact, instead of just creating a flyer that you attach on an email. Overall, HTML is still going to look really good and professional and is generally going to be more accessible than PDFs. When you are converting a document to a PDF, say you write a report in Word and then want to convert the final version to PDF, do the accessibility work in Word first. That will make your life much easier. Then you can just review that PDF in Adobe and correct any little outstanding issues before you share it publicly. If you are using Canva to design and download PDFs, I have a few tips for you. Choose very simple templates, or use a template as an inspiration and create your own simplified version. Canva's preset templates are gorgeous, but they are often very complex and not designed with accessibility in mind because of the types of elements used and the way that they're layered on top of each other. The complicated combinations of elements can cause lots of issues in Adobe that will make your accessibility work really tricky. So stick with clean and simple designs, and if you find designs that are easy to make accessible when you download them as PDFs, save those. Use them again as templates for more of your work in the future. You'll want to check for hidden and overlapping elements and delete them to pare down the design. And try to use built-in headings when designing reports in Canva. But know that those built-in headings and styles may not translate perfectly when you download the PDF. Make sure to stay up to date on Canva's accessibility features. As I mentioned, there have been improvements lately, and hopefully many more improvements are coming soon. The last document type we will touch on today is PowerPoint. There is some nuance with these, but they're generally a lot easier than PDFs. The main considerations for PowerPoint accessibility include a unique title for each slide, logical reading order, alternative text. This is a big one for decks. The most issues I see with PowerPoint decks have to do with hundreds of images that don't have alternative text. And then make sure you include subtitles on embedded videos. So let's take a look at an example. This is our last demo of the day. This content may look familiar. The same type of content that we used in that original Word doc example that we did. But now we see it in a PowerPoint format. So here in Microsoft PowerPoint, we can go to Review at the top, and that is where we're going to find our accessibility checker. So while we're here, why don't we just go ahead and click in to check accessibility. All right, so in PowerPoint, it pulled up a few issues here on the side. So I'll click this caret down where it says missing object description. If you hover over and click, it will bring you to the piece of content that it's talking about. And here it's showing me some recommended actions for this image. It says I can mark it as decorative or add a description. Let's go ahead and add a description for this one. Okay, and then I can click out of there. Next one, it says we're missing a slide title. Okay. Okay, so there's no slide title on this slide. Really, we want this to be the title. Do you know how to maintain your brain health? Okay, so I'll select that. And then when I pull the drop down here, I can do set as slide title. If there wasn't anything that was a natural title on here, I could click add slide title, or I can also do add hidden slide title. Okay, if I do add hidden slide title, it places a hidden text box above the visual view of the slide. And that way you could add a slide title in there. That might make sense if it's a slide, for instance, that has a full screen image on it or something. You'll still need a slide title so that someone using assistive technology knows how to navigate to that slide, since they won't have the visual cue of the image, but it won't be visible. So I'm just going to delete that though, because we want to make this our slide title, set as slide title. There we go. It also flagged a potential issue in reading order. Just like in documents, like PDFs, we want to make sure that we're reading slides in a logical order from left to right, top to bottom. We want to read the title of the slide first. So if we click on that issue, we can select verify object order. And then it brings up the reading order over here. This is very similar to PDFs. We can drag and drop these into the appropriate order. So right now the reading order is that it will read this list of 6 tips, then it will jump over to the image, and then it will read the title of the slide. So let's go ahead and pull the title to the top of the list, then the 6 tips, then the image. I think that makes logical sense. We will click out of there. The last thing that is flagged over here is duplicate slide title. Remember, each slide needs a unique title. I see, and it looks like we have 2 slides in a row that are titled, "What is brain health?" So what we can do then on this second slide, I'm just going to put comma, continued, like that, or something to that effect. If you're the one who developed this content and you think it might make sense just to put a totally different title for the slide altogether, by all means. Usually if I'm editing one of my colleagues' presentations and I don't want to make changes to the content, right? Like I don't know exactly what they would approve of for a title. It's a good practice just to go ahead and write continued. Okay, so we have this box checked here to keep accessibility checker running while we work. So this was working while we were making all those fixes, and you can see now it says no accessibility issues found. People with disabilities should not have difficulty reading this presentation. Even once we go through the accessibility checker, I always think it's a good practice just to pop into the reading order pane one last time and check each of the slides to make sure that we, we validate that the content is in the correct order. So slide 1 is just the title. Slide 2, title, content, perfect. See, I'm just clicking through on the right-hand side. Title, content, great. We already fixed this one. Perfect. So here is a summary and some lessons learned that I wanted to share today. Remember, discuss other formats before deciding on a digital flyer to share information. They're often more accessible and more effective strategies for disseminating information than just through the creation of a flyer. Remember that accessibility should not be an afterthought. Build accessibility into your timelines and make sure it's part of your checklist before sharing anything public online. Create accessible templates. You can pre-design templates with accessibility built in. You can make a PowerPoint deck template with design, like my little navy blue rectangle on the bottom of my slides, like you see here, automatically marked as decorative. And with the titles and content boxes tagged properly and in the right reading order. And then you can give that template to your team and provide them with instructions on how to update the template without making changes to accessibility. It still won't have perfect accessibility every time, but it will save you a lot of time in the long run. You'll want to train your teams and make accessibility everyone's responsibility. Checking for digital accessibility can become as second nature as checking for typos in your writing. It's often more natural for the content creator to make their own work accessible than assigning someone else to do it after the fact. Here are some resources to take with you. We'll also be sharing these in the chat. Here's a copy of our Digital Accessibility 101 webinar that again has a high-level overview of digital accessibility and covers accessible graphic design practices. And then here are some resources from Microsoft and Adobe to help you understand how to better make your documents accessible. So thank you so much for joining today. We appreciate you taking the time to learn more about document accessibility. Even if content creation isn't your main job responsibility, I appreciate that you were here because I hope you'll be able to use some of your new knowledge in this area to help advocate for accessibility and inclusion in your organization's online presence. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is here on the slide, elizabethjeffrey@arizona.edu. Thank you so much.